All right, let me switch gears and ask you about the trade restraints that we're expecting to come out of this White House tomorrow. What can you tell us about these measures? There's been a lot of criticism and upset over the aluminum and steel tariffs. Now we understand that the White House will come up with tariffs on imports of at least $30 billion and also restrictions in terms of Chinese investments in the United States.
Well, I actually think this is where the president is correct looking at China and looking at the intellectual property. What they have been stealing from America, what they've been going in and buying and taking back to China, dealing with military, dealing with technology and others, I think it's an area that you're going to get a lot of agreement on. And when you look at the steel and aluminum, remember the president gave flexibility on that. So what was first brought out and what ended up at the end of the day when we get the majority of our steel from Canada, that had an exemption in it as well. So I think what you'll find coming out, there will be an opportunity, but I think he's correct about looking at what China has been doing and what China has been stealing from America. I think you're going to find other countries join in with this as well.
The president said that he wants to open this up to industry. He wants to hear from companies in terms of what products should be really targeted most. How will that process take place?
Well, he'll lay out the framework coming forward, but I think this is a positive aspect. He's not just going in and saying one size fits all. He wants to listen to individuals and then go out and lead and make sure it's right. It's correct to have this challenge with China. We don't want to get into a trade war, but what we have watched China do over a number of years, and they used from state control going in and buying companies, bringing the technology back to China. They've stolen a number of different intellectual properties from numerous companies, and it's not just in one field. It will go down to agriculture. It'll go into all different aspects. So I think standing up and putting a different perspective on this will turn out to be a very positive aspect.
Because people get this, particularly industry, because when you want to have business in China, sell to the 1.3 billion people, China forces you to give up the technology to do so, right? And then you can't even have an ownership of anything, full ownership. It's a joint venture and you only own 49%.
They have you come in at 49%, they learn what you're doing, in a few short years they kick you away and they have it all. And they come in numerous times, what we've watched them be able to leapfrog of taking the technology and not paying for it. I think this has to stop. People have to respect the intellectual property that people invest in, and I think that's one of the greatest strengths of America, but you're not going to out-innovate them if they keep stealing the property.
So do you want to see a reciprocal situation there, whereas China can't out-and-out acquire companies here, that it's a 49% joint venture? I mean, is that the kind of reciprocal situation that may come out of this?
Well, I don't want to see just some one-size-fits-all, but I want something to be fair in the process. And the other aspect you look at, there's other things that happen with this. As the president stands up to China, China realized they've done something wrong, and now they're finally standing up to North Korea. It's changing the outcome of other aspects. The reason North Korea is coming to the table, one are the sanctions, but I think a part of how the president led not only here, but standing up tough to China at the same time and realized there is a new sheriff in town, and the world's going to be a little different in this administration.
You're right. It's true. Let me ask you about the number here, because the Washington Post is saying, look, this is $60 billion in imports. The Wall Street Journal is saying $30 billion in imports. Do you have any sense? What is the real number?
Well, I think if the president's going to sit and listen to the industry, I don't think anybody has the number right yet. So people will throw numbers out there, but if he's going to sit and listen to the industry, which I think he should do, take their input, and let's put the very best plan forward, that's a good way of going about handling this.
I know for a long time China has certain industries that are off limits. It doesn't matter who it is. If a foreigner comes in and wants to acquire a defense company in China, it's not going to happen. Same with financial services. Should we have industries that are off limits?
Well, I think there's certain areas we should look about off limits, and that's instilling the technology, especially if it's going into military and others. And when you look at these mergers and acquisitions that China has been doing, state-run, going in and stealing these different things, to me, that is an aspect that we really have to look seriously at. And I know CFIUS is be able to do it, but I think we have to take a new approach.
The president has also talked about a phase 2 of the tax plan. He referred to that with Kevin Brady recently. Will Democrats really get on board with the phase 2 of cutting taxes?
They didn't get on board with phase 1.
Exactly.
Remember, they said it was going to be Armageddon, that the bonuses were crumbs.
Right.
But think about how much this tax plan has done. 1.2 million Americans got a longer maternity leave in one company. Millions of Americans got bonuses. Their electrical bill, here we are going to have snow coming, is actually lowered because they passed on the tax cuts in the utility companies. But Democrats still said no. They came out with their own plan. They want to raise taxes if they were able to take the majority. So I think it's smart. All the benefit that we had, where you have unemployment at a new low, I think it's smart that we look at another tax plan going forward, to have more tax cuts, to be able to move this economy and grow. And if you really want to get out of this debt, yes, you have to curb the spending in government, but you have to grow the economy. You will not get out of this problem without growth. And look at all the conversations that you've had. We're finally getting back to 3% growth, something we didn't see in the last 8 years. Yeah. It's a new administration. It's a new opportunity for America. And I think it's the beginning of America's comeback.
What do you want to see in phase two? Would that be making the individual cuts permanent? Would that be another cut on small business? What specifically would you like to see in this phase two?
Well, of course, I want to see the individuals made permanent. But like any big bill, when you go through it, there are going to be other aspects that you didn't think about. Let's see where we need to go there. Let's see how this bill has transferred and changed the economy. Is there places we missed? Let's listen to the economy, and let's go back and analyze that.
I'll tell you, now we're talking about 4% growth, potentially, in this year or perhaps in 19. Do you worry that any of this growth story, which obviously is a big reason coming from the tax plan, is going to get impacted by these tariffs? I mean, that's the worry, that in fact, if you were to put these aluminum and steel tariffs in place, which are supposed to get implemented beginning this week, Friday, that maybe that takes away from some of this growth.
Well, I'm worried about doing anything that's harming this growth going forward. And that's why I was happy that the president had some exemptions in there, especially when it comes to our allies and others.
That's a big part of the story.
Look, China makes the most aluminum and the most steel, but that's not where we buy it from. And they're subsidizing it. So is there another way of going about doing it, not harming our allies? And I think that's the way the exemptions should be moved through. But I'm nervous about what happens to this economy. Yes, we are growing. We don't want to harm or slow it down. But I also think we have to stand up to China on what they've been doing. That's why I don't think one across-the-board position works. That's why listening to the industry is probably a very smart way to handle it.
You say China makes the most in terms of aluminum and steel. That's the overcapacity issue, right? So they produce it and then they just put it into the global marketplace. Maybe we get the most from Canada, but that doesn't mean ultimately it came from China. It didn't come from
China.
Because
they'll do the raw material, they'll supply it, government subsidizes it and able to send it out. And what we've watched, but you also see a number of jobs lower down, manufacturing, have a great deal amount of jobs that utilize that steel to make a product, and you want to make sure those jobs continue growing.
Congressman, I got to ask you about Facebook. Let's talk about that. The mining controversy. The stock is down again this morning. Facebook officials could meet with aides from the House Judiciary Committee as early as today. We're told CEO Mark Zuckerberg expected to address his staff on Friday. Company coming under fire after Cambridge Analytica allegedly misused private information from more than 50 million Facebook users during the 2016 elections. We spoke with Chris Collins earlier, your colleague from New York, and he was pretty adamant in terms of what he's expecting. Listen to this.
I'm confident you will see new legislation coming out, and or the enforcement where it belongs, the FTC, will be coming down on them, so that it's more evident for someone that you're checking a box that's okay.
What should be done here? What can Congress do at this point?
Well, Congress can do a lot of things, but I don't want Congress to overreact without having all the information. First thing I want Congress to do is learn everything that happened. But this is a technology that's continued to grow. This is where a lot of people get their information, even though if it may not be true information. So what roles do we see that should change in there? The first thing that has to happen is Facebook needs to come in and talk to Congress. They need to answer the questions. And after we get all the information, we should see what's appropriate and what's appropriate for the future for the individual going forward. If people are sponsoring ads, do people know who's paying for these ads? If people are putting misinformation out there and utilizing Facebook to disrupt the election process, people have to understand that. And there may be safeguards that we have to deal with. But I don't want to prejudge without having all the information.
I'm not surprised that the political part of this story uses and mines all of this data. Isn't that what happened during the election of Barack Obama? I mean, he was masterful in terms of mining data and figuring out where potential voters were.
You know what? They were so good. They put it out there for people to see, and they sold it around the world for other campaigns to use. The UK used it in the process. They were the ones that pretty much started this. And the difference was the Valley was very excited to help Barack Obama. It's a different aspect now. But we want to make sure that your privacy is protected. But every action you take on Facebook, if you like something, somebody can mine that, right? If you put up from some emotion or some campaign you want to support, people mine that and know which direction you're going. I don't know that that's wrong, but we want to make sure people understand that and know that going in, that your privacy is protected, but also your actions are known.
I would imagine today, given the powerful position and influence that these companies have, you have to look at this.
Oh, by far. We have to seriously look at this, because Facebook is more than a place that somebody goes to post their pictures of their family vacation, right? Now people are getting their news from it. They're posting content on it. And they can't sit there and live in today's world with the laws that they had in the past. I think you have to modernize and you have to apply the traditions to a changing future at the same time.